Hi Siri, I'm looking for a new podcast, one that preferably is hosted by a UF Hall of Famer, one that airs every weekday that would bring me everything I need to know about the Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions. Siri, is there such a show?
Have you heard of Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or any podcast platform?
Oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that? UF Hall of Famer Shane Matthews has a show every weekday. I'm gonna go check it out tomorrow. Thanks, Siri.
Good morning and welcome to a Wednesday edition of the program, Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning, from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. We got our normal Wednesday lineup, JC and Mike Morgan from ESPN. If you missed it last night, the Yankees advanced to the American League Championship Series. They're going to try to go to the World Series for the first time in 13 years. The best team money can buy has struggled getting to the World Series. Whereas the Astros, I believe, are going for their fourth straight trip in the last 6 years. The Padres lose to the Phillies in Game 1. Game 2 is this afternoon. Let's head to the Titan MR hotline. We're joined by a guy who is part of that Yankees program, supposedly. JC, y'all have not been to the World Series in 13 years, and you're best team money can buy. What do you think about that?
Who is y'all? Yeah.
you claim to be a Yankees fan.
Well, I am. No, it's true. Although I would say the payroll in LA is just as high as New York's, and maybe even.
Well, they've been. Last time I checked, they won and been to multiple World Series in the last 13 years.
How many have they won? Once.
So I don't know. Don't care. I'm just saying y'all have not even been to the World Series in 13 years. Think about that.
It reminds me of Florida football winning the SEC. It's about the same time period, isn't it?
Well, we need to pay more players then, or we should find better players to pay. I guess.
I think you meant what you just said. I think you meant exactly what you just said the first time. You better pay more players.
What did I say first time?
You said we better play more players. Yeah. Pay more players.
No. We are paying players now, but we're not paying good enough players to play for us.
Well, you got to start making better business decisions. It sounds like to me, QB.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
Well, I tell you, last night, the Padres game and the Phillies game. If you had trouble sleeping, that would have been something that could help you. We had 2 home runs and a great pitching performance by Zach Wheeler and actually Darvish, but 2-0 with 1 hit. You're not going to go anywhere. So San Diego better figure it out fast, or they'll be down 2 games going to Philly.
JC, everybody, I'm looking here at Facebook Live. They thought you were Todd Grantham because you weren't wearing a hat. Do you look like Todd Grantham?
I might. I don't know. I haven't seen a picture of him recently, but believe it or not, QB, I've actually got to meet people this morning. They have requested my presence, so I'm going to.
What the hell?
Nah, but listen, I'm when business calls, you go. I have to go though quickly because my car is in the body shop from Deergate, and I don't still have it. So I've got to take my golf cart to my mom's house, get in her Honda Civic, and drive that thing to where my first meeting is this morning, showing up in a Honda Civic while the truck is continuing to be fixed. Then I have a crew of about 15 guys out in the front getting ready to replace a roof. And so there's a lot of activity, and another guy wants to take an oak tree down in my front yard. So we've got activity going on during the open week.
All right, we got a text here on the Titan MR text line. This comes from Michael in Bartlett, Tennessee. He says, I agree with your perspective about the defense. I'm a huge Gator fan. We are a spoiled fan base. I hope that we can be patient with Coach Napier. I truly think Napier wants to be here. We have to be patient. I think the rewards will come. I've noticed a difference between last year and this year. It's a no-quit attitude. Last year, the team would have quit when they got down. Thanks for the text. The biggest thing is what I saw going around yesterday was the tweet that it's truly remarkable when you think about it. It's hard to believe.
What is that?
I think I sent it to you, but the last 14 SEC games, Vanderbilt is 0-14. The Gators are 3-11. Missouri is 4-10. South Carolina's 4-10. Auburn's 5-9, and Arkansas is 5-9. I mean, think about that.
Well, so what does that tell you, QB? I think it's pretty obvious.
that we are middle of the road or below middle of the road football program for the last couple of years. I mean,
it is.
The record don't lie. Whether you got a bad defense coordinator, bad players, whatever, it is what it is. And I think people need to. I mean that, and those 3 wins, I think 2 are against Vanderbilt and one's against Vanderbilt, one's against Tennessee last year, and one is against Missouri this year.
Yeah. Well, QB,
that's just hard to swallow.
I mean, what I see is a program that in the last 13 years has had a lot of turnover at the highest level, and that's difficult. Now with the transfer portal and with things that are going to enable you to build your roster quicker or faster, I guess, whatever the right word is, hopefully people will see the allure of Florida and start to decide to come play here. They need players because they're getting the same type of material that South Carolina, Missouri, and all these other teams are getting because the records are the same. Now, listen, they got to the SEC championship very recently, just in 2020. But
why we got there. We had 3 elite players on offense.
Yeah. You did, and that's true, and there were still big, massive gaps in that team. But Mullen did win 10 games a couple times, if I remember right. So he did it with players, but he did it with players from the guy who he replaced, and that was what allowed the attrition of the roster to come to where we are today. He just didn't continue that. Getting those kind of players. I thought McElwain had some pretty good players on the roster. It was pretty obvious that he had some good ones. He didn't have great ones, but he actually did have a couple of great ones, but it wasn't lasting. He didn't have enough of them. So that's what happened to Dan.
We got a Facebook Live brought to you by Melton Law, the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. Andy says, Josh Braun leaving the program mid-season. Is that troublesome? No, not at all. He's trying to graduate. But if he happened to get thrown into a game, he would lose a redshirt year. So with him not playing or playing earlier in the year, he's eligible to save his red shirt. So it's not troublesome at all. There's nothing like any issues within this football program when it comes to discipline, team unity, things of that. Now you got some cancers out there that they will be gone soon. And then Zach asked, can we get to 8 wins? No, there's no way, Zach.
We
only have 5 games left.
It would be a surprise.
That means we'd have to go 4-1, right?
Well, you're at 4-3 right now. You'd have to go to 4. You have to go 4-1. Tough game at South Carolina, tough game at Florida State. I mean, those are 2 tough ones. Of course, the Georgia game. But QB, if I could offer some hope to the dour scenario we're painting here. And that is, just look at what happened in Knoxville, or what is happening in Knoxville, what has been going on here recently in Kentucky. It can happen quickly. You can get that roster right. And I think, you can see things happen more quickly than they have in the past because of the portal and some other things. Josh Heupel, I thought, was a great hire at Tennessee when it happened, but nobody in Knoxville was very excited about it. It just goes to show you that you got to let it play out before you can really make a determination as to whether or not it was a good hire. Tennessee has played 3 SEC games, all against ranked opponents, and they've punted a total of 3 times. 3 times. When you think about that, it tells you that they've got a guy that knows how to move the end zone.
I agree with that, but you got to put an asterisk. That whole ranking thing.
Yeah.
They played the Gators. Gators were ranked, but they should not have been ranked.
Well,
that goes to show you how. That just goes to show you how silly the Associated Press is when the Gators were unranked and they moved all the way from unranked to 12th.
Okay,
that was the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Well, okay,
but no, I hear what you're saying. But here's the difference with Tennessee. What they've done, Josh Heupel inherited a dude that is really good at the quarterback position,
who wasn't even the starter. And
I know that, but he inherited a dude that is really good.
Sure. Listen, but I don't think that dude I think they both help each other. I think Heupel helps Hooker, and Hooker obviously helps Heupel. I mean, through 6 games, the guy has 15 or more touchdowns. He's a plus 15 on his touchdown to interception ratio. He's a 70 plus on his completion percentage and 250 yards plus rushing yards. He is the only quarterback since 2000 to do that. It's incredible what the guy is doing right now. And it does require somebody like that to get you off the mat. So Florida has to find that guy. But even if it's ranked or unranked opponents, punting 3 times in 3 SEC games is fantastic against anybody. So they have found offense. And that's what I think the Florida fans want, because inevitably defenses get better, I think, as long as they know there's points coming and they can play a little bit more violently and not fear that they have to win a game for a team.
Well, if you look at it's just impossible to play defense, in my opinion, these days.
It's true.
I mean, you look at the scores. You just look at the scores across the country. Every one of them are in the 40s or 50s, pretty much. You've got to score. I know people want to play better defense, and I get it. But greatest coach in America, in the world, that's ever coached college football, cannot even get his guys to play defense, and he's in charge of the defense. So think about that.
Well, when you think about, and on top of that, why was he having 2 guys cover 3? And inside the numbers, Tennessee just absolutely ran by him.
Okay, well, like you said, send your complaints to Tuscaloosa, because you know more than he does, right?
Well, no,
you know more than he does.
No, it's not about who knows how much of what. It's about what you see. And what you see is 2 guys trying to cover 3 track stars inside the numbers when all they do is run right by you in man-to-man coverage. It doesn't require anybody to know anything. You can see that, and I don't understand why they didn't adjust. Nobody understands that. Gary Danielson.
Well, maybe they did. JC, maybe they did make adjustments, but the players didn't do what they were told to do. You ever thought about that?
No. What I thought about is, why didn't he use 3 cornerbacks? He used 2, and that didn't change. And that's the problem. And I'm just thinking to myself, what is he? Why are these guys getting so open? And so, if some guy 1,800 miles away can see that on television, what are they seeing in the coach's box and on the field? It's obvious.
Like I said, he doesn't know. He doesn't know what he's doing. Nick Saban doesn't know what he's doing. That's all I'm saying.
That's not the answer. That's not part of what I'm asking.
Well, like I said, call 107 the Tide and tell them you know what they should be doing. Is my point.
QB, I'm just repeating what Gary Danielson said, and all he did was call the game. Okay.
Well, Gary Danielson, sometimes he don't know what the hell. Here's the thing.
He called the game.
Right, but I just talked to. I was on a show yesterday, and they were talking about we were talking NFL football, and they were talking about all these PFF, Pro Football Focus, which they do a good job. I'm not saying they don't, but how they grade all these players, whether it's in college or in the NFL. Here's the thing. I can sit down and I can grade the Alabama tape. I could grade in my own opinion, and I could grade the Florida. It doesn't matter what the team is. I don't know what they're being taught. I don't know what their assignment is on those plays. I can say, well, I can rewind and go, okay, this is this route combination against this coverage. This is what I would do. I don't know what the hell their quarterback coach or their O-line coach or their defensive line coach is telling them what to do in those situations. So all those gradings and all these people that, it's no different than when I talk on air. I don't know what our players are being taught. That's my point.
Well, I'm not talking about
you don't know what Nick Saban's plan was. You don't know what Nick Saban made adjustments that have. We don't know any of that. And he could have made all those adjustments, but the guys that are on the field playing did not do what they were supposed to. We don't know. That is what just blows my mind when these people come out with these gradings and stuff. They have no idea. No idea. Because on certain plays, you can do certain things depending on what happens. So anyway, let's read this here. This is from Daryl. He says, "Good morning, guys. Shane, I like Ole Miss going into Baton Rouge and winning this weekend. What do you think?" Ooh, it's going to be tough. I think LSU's favored in that game. Ole Miss has defense. Ole Miss has defensive issues, and if they don't throw the ball real well, but they can run it now. They can run it real well.
Well, yeah, but I think so. It's 1.5 points. So it's basically a pick-em game in Baton Rouge, and that tells
you got the number 7 team in America playing a team that's lost twice that you say ain't very good.
They're not. And they're going to go to an average bowl. They'll win 8 or 9 games, and that's not LSU's standard. I mean, if you think that's LSU's standard and you're talking about Florida standard, you guys' standards have gone down. And certainly with what they have and the ability to recruit, they should be doing better than that. But I'm willing to give Brian Kelly at least 2 or 3 years to get LSU to where they want to be. I mean, you have to be willing to do that. And look, Mississippi better enjoy Lane as much as they can right now, because he's going to be looked at by other schools that have probably a really good offer coming his way because of what he's able to do at Mississippi. And listen, that Mississippi team is winning games because of players they just recently got. Florida can do the same thing. And if Florida has to do the same thing, and I think they probably will, because they realize that if they don't keep up, they're going to fall behind like they've been doing. So, I mean,
Ole Miss, that's their plan. They got like 28 new players from the transfer.
Right.
Lane ain't going to go recruit high school kids. He's going strictly to the portal. Gators have a high recruiting class. Andy asked, do I think Dejon Reynolds, Caleb Douglas, and other receivers might leave with all the 4 stars coming in? I don't know. I think they were 4 and 5 stars when they came in, Andy. So we'll see. I mean, look, we got a lot of problems across the board at every position. I mean, I said back in May, 7 games, win 7 games, he should be coach of the year. And I ain't budging from that. Greg says LSU's number 5 in recruiting right now. Yeah, they're going to recruit players. But Florida, I think, they sit at 8 right now. I think they can get into the top 5 when it's all said and done. All right, JC, what else you got before we let you go?
Bama has 66 penalties. They lead the SEC in penalties.
Very undisciplined team. That's a reflection of your coach.
And Kansas State is the country's only team that, listen to this, Kansas State is the country's only team that has not thrown an interception this season. Think about that.
Yeah, you know who their quarterback is?
So Adrian Martinez, who was the transfer from Nebraska,
at Nebraska,
who couldn't win any games there, threw 30 interceptions in 4 years at Nebraska. That's one in every 35 or so attempts. But he has no interceptions in 138 attempts this year at Kansas State. So there is no doubt that eventually a player and a coach will come together, just like what we're seeing at Tennessee, and do really wonderful things. And that is what Florida's looking for right now. And you have to give it some time. There's only been one quarterback that Billy Napier has truly been working with right now, and we know who it is. If they don't let Kitna and maybe the other guy play after they lose to Georgia, then they will deserve what they get going forward. I don't care about winning 7 games. I don't care about winning 8 games or even 6. I think the team has to look forward and get these other kids in the game, and let's see what they can do. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. That's my thinking.
Real quick, let's pick the Thursday night games. Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation is number 1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. We got NFL on Thursday. You got the Saints at the Cardinals.
Oh, my God.
I will take the Saints.
I will tell you, I will take Al Michaels to retire before the end of the season if this is what he's going to have to keep doing, because this is miserable. You've got 2 teams.
I bet they're paying him $20 million to do one game a week.
Maybe. No, and there's nothing wrong with that, but come on, dude. We're talking about the 2-2-4 teams, and granted, Saints have had some really unfortunate things happen injury-wise, but that is a miserable-looking game. The Cardinals got this Robbie Anderson guy who stormed off or kicked off the sideline in the Carolina Rams game last weekend, so they made a trade for him to get Kyler Murray somebody to throw to. They will also be getting DeAndre Hopkins back from his suspension. That will help him. Arizona should be okay to win this game at home. Once they get some wide receivers from Murray, maybe his numbers will improve. I think he's the most overpaid quarterback in football, but granted, he doesn't have the weapons that he's had before. So I think Arizona, you got the Saints. I'll take the Cardinals. I'm rooting for the Saints, but I'll just go ahead and be different and lay the 2.5. College football, I don't think has anything that we can get excited about up until Saturday.
I'll tell you what is exciting for the Rambling Wreck crew.
Yeah.
You know, tomorrow night, well, there's a game tonight. Georgia State's playing App State. And, you know, what's amazing is App State sits at 3-3 after all those great wins early in the year. But Georgia Tech is sitting at 3-3 right now.
Yes.
Second in the Coastal, believe it or not.
Yes. Well, it's amazing.
Team. I mean, give the whoever the interim coach is credit, because they didn't win. He's won 3 in a row. He's
won 2. They won at Pittsburgh, and they won last week at home against Duke. in 2 games they were not favored to win. Give him a lot of credit. Whatever he's doing is something Jeff Collins obviously wasn't doing. They will likely win at home against.
Did Jeff Collins win a game?
Jeff Collins did win.
They beat my boy Kerwin 35-17 early.
Yeah, they beat Kerwin, but they were 1-3 and looked horrible. And here's a team that's setting up to win its 3rd straight game. When they host Virginia tomorrow night, I'm going to pick them to do that. And then they come to Florida State. And you know what? The Seminoles, for all their fanfare early in the season with some of those big wins, have fallen on some hard times here lately with a couple of losses as well. So Georgia Tech is a story that's, if it can happen there and things can get better, then they can get better here. And I certainly don't know if that's the case for Georgia Tech long term, but you have to give them credit. He's won 2 games he was not favored to win. They should be 1-5, and instead they're 3-3.
I got a text here on the Titan MR text line from an anonymous texter. Says, why is it that Justin Shorter 6'5", 230, and he plays like he's 5'9", 180? He's played okay this year. Not great, but okay.
You think Justin Shorter? Let me ask you this: if you put Justin Shorter in Tennessee's offense, what do you think happens to him?
I think he's a much better player. I don't know if he's fast enough to play in their offense. Their dudes are a little slimmer and can run. Mm-hmm. But no, he'd catch a lot more balls. I'll tell you that.
Right. So when we go and recruit players, we have to keep this in mind, and these players are going to keep it in mind of what it is the offense does here at Florida. So you just keep that in mind too. Maybe he'll have to adjust.
Who's that?
Napier.
Well, I think he's got to get to where this is my personal. I don't think I think he's scared to death call pass plays.
Yeah. Well, today he is, but I think if he gets something, look, he's got 2 guys on the bench that you have said over and over again can spin the ball. So I want to see him play.
But I think this NIL stuff's going to get in the mix and whatever. I mean, like I said, we got to find a way to get to a bowl game for the young kids can practice. The Shamar Jameses of the world, all these true freshmen that are on the roster right now, they need more time practicing.
Well, there's 6 wins on the schedule. QB, there is 6 wins on the schedule. I mean, they have to get to 6. I certainly think they can get to 6. If you look at this schedule, you've got a game at Vanderbilt, you've got a game against South Carolina. Look, it's not going to be easy, but getting to 7 even is not going to be easy, frankly. At Texas A&M after the Georgia game, and then South Carolina, who pushed them around last year. Those are not gimmies. Let's just be honest. In fact, none of those games are guaranteed wins, and certainly we know that. Vanderbilt would be their 5th win. That's not going to be enough. They have to get to 6. So we'll see if they can.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen the schedule, right? I mean, you know the schedule in front of us, right? You've seen it. And
I think we should beat every one of those teams except A&M. I think A&M's better than we are, and I think Georgia's clearly better than we are. But I mean, you don't know what's going to show up. I mean, I think South Carolina's horrible. Vanderbilt is pathetic.
Yeah.
And I think FSU is exactly the same team we are. Just like I said, LSU was. The difference in LSU is they made some stops. Their quarterback played unbelievable, made unbelievable throws. I saw some clips. Somebody sent me some clips of him yesterday, some throws. Mm-hmm. And they showed like how Ventrell Miller blitzed, kind of hit Jaden Daniels as he threw the ball, but glanced off of him to avoid a roughing the passer, which was really cool how he did that. But the throw Jaden Daniels made, I was like, wow, it was really good. So anyway, all right, JC, we'll talk to you on Friday. Go study, get ready, and get us some good games for Friday.
You bet. Okay, we'll see that.
Let JC join us on the Titan Ball Hotline. We're going to take a timeout. When we come back, we'll be joined by Mike Morgan from ESPN, get his thoughts on the landscape of college football, get his thoughts on the Gators as well. You're watching and listening. Product Matthews in the morning.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Comfort Temp, Comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise. QC Kinetics. Live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, Chris Doring Mortgage, Silverback Concrete Co., Ruse Ogra State Farm Insurance, Doreen Wiebe Realtor Caldwell Banker M.M. Parish. Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Adams Rib Company, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteaks, MB Listing, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, Avra and Smith, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Cube Billiards and Sports Bar. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, visit potupwithshane.com and click the advertise button. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the show. If you like what we are doing here, make sure you follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Pro football legend Emmitt Smith understands your joint pain.
It does not surprise me that there are a ton of people out there that's in pain.
That's why Emmitt is such a proponent of QC Kinetics, offering real lasting joint pain relief with non-surgical, all-natural biologic treatments.
Whether it's a joint pain, ankle pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, back pain, hip pain, any kind of pain, the body eventually will break down when it's under that much stress.
That stress can cloud your judgment to the point that you'll just say yes to the scalpel or yes to another prescription of pain pills. But maybe it's time for a second opinion from QC Kinetics.
The reason why I would recommend this is because the natural biologics that QC Kinetics is providing you gives your body a chance to naturally heal itself.
Restorative, regenerative solutions are here. Get lasting relief and live your life.
Call QC Kinetics, 352-400-4550. That's 352-400-4550. QC Kinetics, 352-400-4550.
Welcome back to the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Are you in the market to buy or sell your home? Doreen Wiebe, a realtor with Caldwell Banker M.M. Parish, will provide you with fast, friendly, reliable service. Call her today at 352-562-1411 to help your dreams come true. We're now going to go to the Titan MR hotline. We're going to be joined by ESPN's Mike Morgan. It's brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Good morning, Mike. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing good, Shane. How are you?
Not too bad. Got a lot of stuff to ask you here, Mike. I want to start first. Let's start with Alabama-Tennessee game. Obviously, it was an unbelievable game. We got people saying Tennessee got multiple calls, what have you. Regardless of that, you got to give Tennessee a lot of credit. Boy, they're good. They are good on offense, and Hendon Hooker's got to be the leading Heisman contender, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think he's certainly up there. Look, if Alabama hits the field goal, we might still be talking about what a phenomenal game Bryce Young played, because he was outstanding.
It was, in my opinion, I don't mean to interrupt, it was the best game he's played since he's been at Alabama.
I agree. I mean, some of the plays he made were just ridiculous. We were talking about Heisman moments. He had a half dozen of them in that game. So that's the that's the conversation if they win the game. But obviously they miss a field goal and Tennessee hits their field goal, and so it's the focus is 1,000% on Tennessee, and as it should be. Shane, I was thinking about this, and this is something I'm going to be talking about on my podcast. We're dropping it later today, JC and Morgan. Sometimes it's simply better to be lucky than good, and this is to take away nothing from Tennessee. But we always talk about how, coaching hires are made and how programs are built. Let's go back at 2 years ago. Josh Heupel was a guy, I've got several friends who went to UCF. He was not exactly beloved by UCF fans, okay? There was a feeling that the program peaked under Scott Frost, and Josh Heupel was okay, but he was no Scott Frost. And the criticism was they were losing some games like Tulsa, and games that they didn't lose under Scott Frost. They were losing under Josh Heupel. Tennessee after making a debacle hire at Pruitt by Phil Vollmer. Tennessee is in, we got to get a big name kind of caged animal syndrome type hire mode. And guess what? Nobody's taken. So all those big names you heard Tennessee fans wanted, they didn't get. So they wind up hiring Josh Heupel. And the only reason they hired Josh Heupel is because the AD happens to be the AD that worked with him at UCF. So it was the most non-plus, just yawn fest type hire. You couldn't find two Tennessee fans that were excited about the hire of Josh Heupel. I remember doing Missouri games when he was the offensive coordinator there. If you go back before that, Josh Heupel was fired by his alma mater as the offensive coordinator. Okay. Mm-hmm. So his track record was not exactly this just blue chip can't miss. Hendon Hooker was a guy that was at Virginia Tech. In the COVID year, they tried him. He did have COVID hit him pretty hard, and he was not an effective quarterback. Couldn't keep the job. Right? Comes to Tennessee, it's supposed to be Joe Milton's job, and then all of a sudden, Joe Milton doesn't play well. That opens the door to Hendon Hooker. My point is that if you would have told me 2 years ago Tennessee was going to be top 5 in the country because of Josh Heupel, a coach that not many people wanted, and Hendon Hooker, a quarterback who couldn't win the job at Virginia Tech, Shane, I would have given you every possession I have and put several more on loan.
I agree. And I think a lot of people do forget that, Joe Milton was the guy that he chose to lead that offense, and he struggled, and Hooker has taken over and run with it. But it was a good win for the Vols. I've had so many people say, what was Nick Saban and the offense doing on that last possession when all they had to do was milk the clock to either win the game with the field goal or go into overtime? But they had a couple incomplete passes. Well, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think he made a mistake. I think even the very best of the best make mistakes, and he made a time clock management mistake at the end of that game. If you don't get it, if you don't get the winner, that's fine. But you sure as heck don't leave time for your opponent to do so. And look, I've seen NFL coaches do this all the time. Clearly, it's easier when we're sitting and watching on TV to think of this stuff. But no, it was a mistake. I think deep down, Nick Saban knows it was. At bare minimum, that game should go into overtime, and you should have a chance to win it there if you can't convert on the field goal. But they made some calls that clearly left enough time. And again, we're not talking about your average offense. Tennessee has a unique ability to score very, very quickly. And Alabama's defense didn't stop Tennessee all game. So there's no reason to believe they were all of a sudden going to do it on that final drive. So it was a mistake, no doubt about it.
Like, speaking of defense, obviously people are up in arms about the Gator defense. But if you look at the scores recently in college football, I just think it's impossible to play defense these days. I know the rules favor the offense, but you look at Ole Miss, Auburn, you look at all those scores out in the Pac-12, you look at TCU, Oklahoma State. I mean, it's just high-scoring games.
Yeah.
Can anybody play defense anymore?
This is what I always get from coaches. When you sit down and you talk to defensive coordinators, they are pulling their hair out because even if they feel like they've got you scouted properly and they've got the schemes all set up and they got guys who can make plays, the bottom line is if you have elite talent on offense, you're going to beat elite talent on defense. I mean, we saw that with some of the Alabama-Clemson games back when they were playing for national titles. The advent of RPOs and, some people would say getting away with cheating with linemen downfield and not really allowing the defense to have a fair shot because you don't know what they're going to do. You have no idea what you're going to do. By the time you do, it's too late. The notion now you can't, when you played Shane, if you had a receiver go over the middle, he knew he was going to get clocked, and that psychologically puts something in your head. But you can't do that now. Receivers, they don't get hit like they used to. You don't get that kill shot from the safety. It's a different deal. And quite frankly, offenses have just evolved. I mean, everybody copies from everybody else. And we are at a time now where they know how to put stress on a defense every possible way that it can be done. So it's 11 on 11, but very often it feels like it's 13 on 11. And yeah, if you've got elite talent on offense, there's very little that a defense can do. I don't care how talented it is.
I agree 100% with that. Andy's got a question on Facebook Live brought to you by Mel Law. It says, Mike, with all the undefeated and one-loss teams in college football, could the NCAA implement the new playoff format sooner than even 2024?
No, I don't think 2020. I think 2024 is the earliest. And quite frankly, that's what I'm keeping my fingers crossed for. The latest will be 2026, as we know. But 2 years earlier is the best we can do. And the reason is because all the TV contracts kind of make that very complicated and muddy. And then, of course, you've got schools departing and leaving for other conferences now. That's all going to kind of happen simultaneously. But I think 2024 is the best we could hope for. One more year after this one of the 4-team, and then hopefully we can get to that 12-team.
Yeah, I saw someone tweet saying, prepare yourself for a 12-1 SEC championship Alabama team, a 12-1 SEC runner-up Georgia, an 11-1 Tennessee with only one loss, which was to Georgia, and a 11-1 Ole Miss team with a loss to Alabama. So all 4 teams getting into the championship. That's not going to happen because you got you got some big games out in the Pac-12 this week. UCLA is going to Oregon. Oregon only has one loss, believe it or not, and that was to Georgia in the opener. So that's a huge game out there. I want to go back to the Florida game. I don't know if you watched it live or if you watched the replay. I know the fans were upset. Gator defense stinks. We know that. But I thought Jaden Daniels was outstanding for LSU.
He was the best player on the field. And look, I've seen Jaden Daniels be good before, but it was a little too easy, quite frankly, for Jaden Daniels. I mean, he just seemed completely unbothered by anything Florida's D did, whether it was running the football, whether it was throwing the football. It shouldn't be that easy. It just shouldn't. But like you said, I mean, look, we knew this was not going to be a dominating Florida defense from the start. Okay, so that part wasn't a surprise. To have an LSU offense that's been a little hot and cold come in and put 45 points down on you in the swamp, that's discouraging. I said I didn't have much of a feel going into that game because there's just a lot to be desired with both those teams right now. But I think it's safe to say after watching that game, LSU is just a step ahead of where Florida is. A step ahead talent-wise on defense, step ahead talent-wise on offense, and they've got a more reliable quarterback at this point in Jaden Daniels. And all that showed out in the swamp, and that's why you have a 10-point loss. But again, I mean, these are all kind of, I don't want to say teaching moments, but they're moments where you know, as Billy Napier and your staff, where you are and how much work needs to be done. How much work needs to be done in recruiting, how much work needs to be done in establishing an identity on offense, on defense, because all that is, it's still kind of a malaise right now. You know, there's still a lot that clearly needs to be figured out.
I agree with that. All right, let's talk about a big game in the SEC this weekend. The Rebels, who are undefeated and 7th in America, I think, travel to Baton Rouge. How will LSU respond after the win against Florida? This is a big rivalry game that I think a lot of people don't realize. It goes back for years. You think the Rebels can stay undefeated?
I am waiting for this bubble to burst, Shane.
Me too.
Maybe I'm just too stubborn here, but I look at Ole Miss. I don't think they're a great team. I just don't. Now, look, I give them credit. They are a true byproduct of the portal. Without the portal, they are in the bottom third of the league. All their top players, portal guys. Everywhere you look, portal. That is how they went from a team that lost all their key players and still they look like they haven't missed a beat in a lot of ways. But, I mean, they don't have a Matt Corral. Their quarterback play has been good, but it's not that good. What they do have is a running game that I haven't seen in Oxford in a long time. I mean, what they run for 4 and change last week. And again, you're talking about 2 portal running backs, the main one being from TCU and the other one a freshman. There might be a third back that's also a portal guy. But the point is, like, they can truly ground and pound. Like, this is not your typical Lane Kiffin offense. It's certainly not what they did with Jeff Lebby and company calling up plays for Matt Corral last year, where they're just dropping dimes left and right. They are trying to out-physical you because they know they don't have the best quarterback play in the world. And defensively, they've been good enough. They've been a pleasant surprise. I would have thought losing both coordinators and all those players, this would have been a setback year. So I give them credit. But I look at the rest of their schedule. They're going to lose some games now. I mean, they're not going 11-1, 12-0. I think the bill is going to come due here pretty soon for Ole Miss.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Auburn went up and down the field on them, and Auburn is not very good on offense. So we'll see. I think LSU will find a way to win that game. At Chris Doring Mortgage, they do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville, North Central Florida. Call Chris Doring Mortgage today at 352-244-0840. Speaking with Mike Morgan on the Titan Amar hotline, he's brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Got a text here on the Titan Amar text line. It's an anonymous texter. He just says, Mike, are you a fan of Patrick Toney?
A fan of who?
Patrick Toney, the Gator defensive coordinator.
Oh, I thought you said somebody else. Am I a fan of Patrick Toney? That is not a question I've been asked. I don't know enough about Patrick Toney to be a fan or a detractor. I just know right now the defense obviously has a ways to go. But again, before we get into X's and O's and we get into coaches specifically, Shane, I just don't see the talent there. I mean, I see a guy like Ventrell Miller who's a stud, and then I see some good players here and there, but there's a lot of work to be done in recruiting. I mean, wouldn't you agree? Like we could talk about scheme all day long, but you got to have the Jimmies and the Joes.
Well, I mean, I said back in May that the worst part of this Florida football team was the front seven on defense, and I still stand by that. We got guys that should not be playing in Southeastern Conference football, quite honestly. And it's nothing against those kids. It's just the facts. So it's going to take time. I wanted to ask you, there's a big game in Clemson this week. Clemson is undefeated. Syracuse is undefeated. I just don't know how Syracuse can compete with these guys, but they're playing really well with the transfer quarterback from Mississippi State, Garrett Schroeder. What do you see happening in Death Valley?
Again, much like I was talking about with Ole Miss, I think reality fits in here. Syracuse has been a great story. Dino Babers done a good job. They've been one of the surprise teams of the year. They have not beat a lot of good teams, if we're being honest. And I think Clemson now has found its way. Like, the time to have beaten Clemson was beginning of the year, when they were still transitioning from, what is DJ going to look like? How dominating is the defense going to be? They're a little nicked up here and there. Now they're starting to remind me. I'm not saying they're as good as the title teams that Dabo had, but they're pretty doggone good, and I certainly think they're in a different level than Syracuse. I like Clemson in that game.
Yeah, I agree with that. What do you think about the Oregon UCLA? Chip Kelly's got his Bruins undefeated, and let's just say they win this game at Oregon. I think all they have left really would be the Trojans of USC beat to stay undefeated. Am I wrong there?
Yeah, no. I mean, look, they're a terrific story. Chip Kelly again is a guy that, because he's not going to win points with his personality. He's just, that's just not his thing. And so when things were not going well, and they weren't, it was very easy for people to pile on and just say this guy's done, not going to work, bad hire, overrated. what almost worked in Chip Kelly's favor is that they clearly don't look at football at UCLA the way we do at Florida or places like that, because you look at the attendance. It's like that even when they're winning. It's just, if you've ever been out there, I know you have. I mean, it's just a different vibe, man. It's a pro town. They don't have the same passion. Southern Cal clearly is a different vibe than UCLA, and UCLA they've just been irrelevant for so long. But my point is that actually can work in your favor if things aren't going well, because you don't hear all the noise as much. And Chip Kelly didn't have all this hot seat talk and people ready to fire him like you would at a lot of SEC schools. So now you give them time, got a good quarterback in DTR, and they're actually they're a formidable team. I want to see what they do at Oregon. I think game day is going to be out there this week. You win that game, and now all of a sudden, like, you're in a lot of conversations. You're in a lot of conversations that nobody thought you would be at the beginning of the year. So, yeah, in a year in which I called this, Shane, the year of redemption. There's so much redemption going on, whether it's Tennessee, whether it's a guy like Chip Kelly, TCU. I mean, there's just a lot of players, coaches, programs that have struggled or have been going through adversity, and they're all having their time in the high life right now. And UCLA and Chip Kelly is one of them.
Another big game around the country in the Big 12. You got undefeated TCU at number 8 in America playing Kansas State, who only has one loss. I guess whoever wins this game will be sitting atop the Big 12 standings.
Yeah. And that game with TCU, Oklahoma State was a classic. Oklahoma State, I thought, would have won it. They certainly could have won it, wound up losing it in overtime. So TCU now becomes the top dog. And again, we've talked about Duggan on your show and Coach Dykes, and look, they're just balling right now. I think they win that game, and TCU is going to be a problem for anybody else that they play in what has become a really entertaining, competitive Big 12 because of the 10 teams in the league. I mean, almost all of them can beat you. Like it's not like most of the Power 5 leagues in that respect, and there's some really good teams at the top, and TCU is one of them. I think that's a sneaky good matchup on Saturday. We don't have nearly as many good matchups as we had this past Saturday. This past Saturday, I hope people realize you saw one of the best college football weekends you might see in your lifetime for the regular season. It was that good. This weekend we're gonna pump the brakes a little bit on the overall slate.
On Facebook Live, brought to you by Melon. Tony says, "Can we get Mike on Saturday nights instead of Joe Tessitore?"
I'd love to do some Gator games on Saturday nights. I would certainly take that for sure. We'll see if we can get that through the hopper.
A couple more things before we let you go here, Mike. And Mike's brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Notre Dame. I mean, they sit at 3-3. They lost to a really bad Stanford team at home. Are there any rumblings with the Irish faithful? I mean, they're not going to fire their coach in year one, but what's going on up with Notre Dame?
I don't know. Look, the hire was a very, very interesting hire. Like, you're Notre Dame. And the last time they made a hire like that, where they just hired somebody from within, it was Bob Davie, and that was a debacle. Marcus Freeman is popular with his players. We get that, but you don't make a hire based on that. Like you look at the track record there, and that's just typically not a hire that a program like Notre Dame makes. You're Notre Dame. You go out and you get somebody who's established, a guy who's been a winner, and a guy that's a difference maker. There's no reason to believe Marcus Freeman is that. Does he become that? Maybe. But that was a hire that it was celebrated by the national media. But if you talk to Notre Dame fans, and I know a couple, one of them I've known since I was 10 years old, it was a head scratcher. It was a head scratcher to just go from within, as opposed to Lore, one of the many names that would kill for a job like that. It's a marquee job. So, year one it's going to be a obvious setback. And I do think for all the people that criticize and don't like Brian Kelly, and apparently there's a lot of them, I don't totally understand why, but he certainly just has his critics that root for him to do poorly. I think when it's all said and done, you're going to realize Brian Kelly took Notre Dame about as far as Notre Dame is going to go, unless they decide to join a conference, which it's pretty obvious they don't want to do that. The guy won 10 plus games a year, got you to multiple playoffs and championship game type scenarios going back to the BCS era. He recruited well. They played well. They didn't have any scandals. Like that's, I don't know if you're going to, I don't know if Brian Kelly is going to be as appreciated as much now as he will be 5 years from now.
All right, I want to end with this, Mike, because this was all over Twitter yesterday or the day before, and I want to get your thoughts. You're a Gator grad. You talk to coaches around the league when you're doing games, and I just feel like nobody fears the mighty Gators anymore. When you look at the record in the last 14 SEC games, Vanderbilt's 0-14. The Gators are 3-11. Missouri's 4-10. South Carolina's 4-10. Auburn 5-9. Arkansas 5-9. That's just hard to swallow.
Yeah, it's hard for me to swallow. Just seeing kind of the hierarchy of the league and trying to see where Florida's, where their footing is in it. And, for years and years, it was like the Power Six of this conference. You had the Beasts of the East, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee. And then in the West, you had Auburn, Alabama, LSU. And everybody else was kind of, doing their best, and they might peak a year here, peak there. But those six had such huge advantages in terms of tradition, facilities, recruiting, very often coaching. And so to see Florida not in that group right now and to see them look, the LSU series is probably encapsulates the frustration of what it's been like to be a Gator fan over these last 2 years as much as anything. LSU's a credible program, but to lose, 4 in a row now, Shane? That's just a tough pill to swallow. The Kentucky series, tough pill to swallow. Losing games to a South Carolina, like all these things have been. It's just like where is it? Look, I have no doubt Billy Napier can bring it back. And Florida can be back. There is so much to sell at that university and in that football program. So much to sell. But clearly, much like has happened at some other programs I never thought would struggle as much as they have, like a Tennessee, it can get back. And maybe you can look at Tennessee and realize, okay, it took them 2 years to go from a dumpster fire, an absolute dumpster fire where they were an embarrassment in so many ways, to a national power again. If it can happen that quickly for Tennessee, why can't it happen that quickly in Gainesville? And I think that's got to be your hope, is that with the portal and with all the movement now in college football, it doesn't take 5 years to rebuild and get to the glory. So that's what you have to hold on to, hope for. But you're absolutely right. It's hard to see, and maybe, I was spoiled watching guys like you light it up week after week in the SEC and eventually win SEC championships just about every year or every other year. And so, at that point, you never thought Florida would ever be a non-power in college football. And that's the part where you're just sitting back and saying, okay, it's going to happen again, but when and how? And those are the two answers that the new administration has to figure out.
Yep. Good stuff as always, Mike. We appreciate your time, and have a good week, my man, and we'll talk to you next Wednesday.
You got it. Always love it, Shane. Thanks again to all the listeners and the question. You guys, you got a sharp audience there each and every week.
Yes, we do. That's Mike Morgan, brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. And we're going to wrap up today's program by telling you about Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visit ogreinsurance.com. Give them a call at 1779. Hope you enjoyed today's program. Again, I want to thank Mike, Morgan, and JC for joining us on the Titan MRI Hotline. That wraps up today's program. Have a great day, folks. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.